What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Cars No Cap. As you know, I buy a new car every 6 months to review for you guys. Last 6 months, I had the 2023 Lexus GX460 Blackline. God, how I love that car. Now, I'm jumping into the 2023 Toyota Tundra Platinum iForce Max with the giant battery in the back. This thing's pretty sweet. Today we're gonna give you a full review, interior, exterior, drivability, how I've liked it after putting 2,000 miles on it. So let's jump in and get started. All right, so first thing you'll notice jumping into the 2023 Tundra Platinum, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I got these awesome running boards that drop down automatically. That's one of my favorite features of this truck. Now, I know that might seem a little silly, but I have a wife and kids, and you know, my wife likes to step up on those, and it makes it easy to get in and out of the car seats. Now, I know you're probably not here to hear about my adventures with my kids. You're probably here for the truck, so I'll get back to the truck. This is the 2023 Toyota Tundra Platinum Edition with the iForce Max motor. This is as fully loaded as you can get aside from being a TRD Pro or a Capstone. It does have the top power plant though. And the engine that comes in this bad boy is the 3.4 liter twin turbo 6-cylinder from Toyota. That is a new-ish motor that's been in some of the LX cars for a while, but now they dropped it in the truck. And it's very welcome. This motor is very powerful when paired with this battery pack that they threw in here. Total horsepower is 437 horsepower, 583 pound-feet of torque. If you know anything about trucks and horsepower and torque, 583 pound-feet of torque from a typical, half-ton full-size truck is pretty insane. It's a pretty big number. The Ford does not come anywhere close. I think Ford's like 400 and 400 horsepower torque. Chevy, the 6.2 liter, those motors do not come close when it comes to torque. Horsepower, maybe, but torque, no. The idea behind Toyota engineers putting this battery pack in here was not necessarily to make this car faster or make this truck faster. It was to make it haul better and make the hauling of the hauling experience more seamless. I haven't hauled with it yet, so I really don't know if that's going to be the outcome of having the battery pack, but I can tell you that it feels super torquey driving around town. So as I mentioned, I've been testing this vehicle for a couple months. I came from a Lexus GX460. Now I'm in this 2023 Platinum. Overall, guys, I love this vehicle. It's a really great truck. I've driven F-150s. I've driven Chevy Silverados. I've driven a lot of the competition. And this truck is really, really done well. The new TNGAF platform, I think is what it's called, that Toyota has this frame built on. Really is a very subdued, compliant chassis. In a pickup truck, it does drive a lot smaller than some pickup trucks do. Now, with that said, it's still a truck. It still is going to be more bumpy than a Lexus GX460, for example. When you're driving around town, you're gonna get that jar, but that's because the dampers on this thing are damped to be hauling a ton of weight and be able to tow 13,000 pounds or so. So you're never gonna get that fully plush experience out of a pickup truck that you might want because they're geared for hauling and they kind of have to have a little bit of a stiffer damper, unless you have some sort of adaptive suspension, which this does not. Let's dive into the interior real quick. I do have some complaints and there's some things that I want to highlight in this truck that I have had issues with in the last 3 months, but let's dive in. We'll start with the interior, we'll hit the exterior, and then we're going to do a driving review. All right. So the interior in this truck is overall very welcome and an upgrade from the previous gen. Now that doesn't mean that it is as nice as an Audi or a BMW or a Mercedes or a Lexus interior. It just means it's better than the previous. And it's a lot better than the previous. The previous really sucked, for lack of a better term. This truck completely changes and improves on everything that I think Toyota owners wanted. So you'll see, the giant touchscreen and wireless Apple CarPlay is one of the biggest upgrades that I think. When it comes to buying a car, I don't really want a car if it doesn't have CarPlay, and if it doesn't have wireless CarPlay, it's definitely a drawback for me. So I'd recommend if you're looking for a car, check out wireless CarPlay because it makes your life way easier. My GX was plugged CarPlay, and it kind of became a little bit cumbersome. So that's one thing that's welcome in the interior. The visual aesthetic of the interior is much better. It looks more luxury. There's, nice leather touch points around the dash and the arms, black headliner in the Platinum Edition. Things like that do make it look nice. Now, I will say it looks nice, but I personally feel like this interior it feels cheap. I'm gonna be honest and brutally honest, because that's kind of what I'm here to do at Cars No Cap, is not sugarcoat anything around these cars. That's why I buy them and review them. So you guys can get a true unbiased review from my owned and tested vehicles that I own. It's because I'm not working with a Toyota manufacturer who's, you know, encouraging me to say good things about the car. So anyway, interior overall, I think it feels a little cheap. Things squeak. Particularly these HVAC vents are just atrocious. I really truly hate these HVAC vents. They feel like a kid's toy, and it's a $70,000 truck as tested. The armrests on the doors, they like move around a little bit. They're pretty comfortable, but they move in a way that just feels like they're not well made. All of the plastic looks like it has like a rough edge on it in the interior. It doesn't look that great. Now, all of these things I will say, you know, and this is like true up and down the door. I mean, I can see, like, if you look on the interior, this little pocket here, like it's got like a plastic raw lip, and then it like wiggles. It's pretty bad. And for that reason, I'm probably not keeping this truck for a full 6 months. Now, if you needed a pickup truck, I'd probably still would buy this one for the, you know, the power plant and things like that, which do make it really nice. But the interior space is just not what I would expect from a $70,000 truck. Some other things in the interior space are, I have a squeaky driver's seat. So my driver's seat here, I'll see if you can hear it. I don't know if the mic's picking that up, but since day one, this driver's seat has been squeaky. Now, I'm sure Toyota will fix that if I were to take it to the dealer. I haven't taken it to the dealer because I just don't have time, and I don't really care all that much, because it has kind of, you know, I've gotten used to it, and I don't notice it anymore. But it is one of those things that, like, if you're paying 70 grand for this truck and you want to keep it for a long time, you definitely would be annoyed by things like that. And other things in the interior, like all these like plastic finishes, they just feel cheap. Now the screens look good, the screens don't feel cheap. The powertrain doesn't feel cheap. Nothing else feels cheap. It almost just feels like everything they dropped on top of this truck feels cheap. I also have the JBL sound system, which doesn't feel cheap. It's pretty decent. It's not great, but it's pretty decent. I think there's a subwoofer under my seat, and I have JBL tweeters and things like that around the cabin. So it's pretty decent. The rear view mirror is really nice. You get a full backup camera in the rear view mirror. The camera system in here is really nice. You can see 360 around the truck really impeccably well. Trying to think of some other things here that are worth calling out. The panoramic moonroof is really nice. I think that, you know, it makes the whole truck feel wide open. I have peasant blockers in the back, so you can pull the shades up and block out, you know, sun and things like that for the kids. The back of the truck is roomy, but it's not as roomy as the previous gen, so keep that in mind if you're coming from a previous gen. If you get the iForce Max with the battery pack, it takes up a lot of room in the back. You can't fold the seats up and flat lay things. It's one of those things that, you know, if you're storing a lot of stuff in the back and using this as a work truck, it might be a problem. If you're not using this as a work truck, you're probably not really going to care. We have plenty of room for my wife and kids. It's definitely still a pretty decent family hauler. But one thing that I did learn owning this truck is that I thought a pickup would be, you know, one of the more perfect family haulers, and I actually don't necessarily think that anymore. I think that a pickup actually isn't the best family hauler. It's not a bad family hauler, but I think an SUV for a lot of reasons is better. So just keep that in mind if you were looking at these, because a lot of people buy these as family haulers now. If you had storage, if you had a covered bed, you definitely can store a lot more in the bed if you cover it, but then you got to buy a bed cover, and everything is outside of the cabin, so you can't grab it while you're on a road trip or something like that as easily. Just things to think about. It could work perfect for you. It depends on your personal circumstance. But that's why I buy these cars and I own them to test and kind of give you a real world review. I have heated steering wheel, cooled and ventilated seats. I definitely have heated in the rear. I don't think they're ventilated, but they're heated. Let me check that. Oh no, I'm wrong. They're heated and ventilated in the rear. So that's actually pretty wild. You got wireless charging pad in the middle here. So yeah, the interior is a decent place to be. Not a ton of complaints there. In terms of like overall livability and ride quality, it's a pain in the ass to park. I will say that if you're buying a full-size pickup truck, think about when you're parking it, you know, if you work in a parking garage or something like that, if it's going to be your daily driver, just keep in mind that like it's full-size pickups are a pain to park. I don't think that's any knock on the Tundra specifically, but full-size pickups in general are a pain to park. So just something to think about. That's the interior. Let's chat about the exterior real quick. Exterior styling on this thing I think is dope. I think it looks really good from the front, the back, the sides, top down, left, right, however you look at it. It's a good looking truck. I think it's better looking than the F-150. I think it's better looking than the Chevys. I think it's better looking than the Titan. Best looking truck out there in terms of the half ton pickup, especially in the TRD Pro trim. The TRD Pro trim on this is fire. Check it out. If you want to spend the extra money, buy it. It's pretty cool. I want to touch on the battery pack a little bit though, because the big thing with this truck is that it's a hybrid, right? So this is my first hybrid I've ever owned. I've never owned a hybrid before. And sorry, I gotta take a quick break. All right, we're back. It's a hybrid. The battery pack's really cool in terms of delivering that torque that you know you're expecting. But I will say that my favorite part about the battery pack is that when I am idling, I use quotations because the engine's not really on, but when I'm parked in a parking lot and I want to have power, and this scenario happens a lot. Think about, you know, your wife wants you to drop her off to go run in to like drop a UPS package off or home goods, or she's getting her nails done, or, you know, whatever it might be. If you're sitting in a parking lot, you don't have to have the engine running because the battery pack powers the air conditioning, the radio, all the accessories around the car. So you're not burning gas when you're just sitting somewhere, which I personally think is pretty awesome. I think it definitely has improved my fuel economy. I'm tracking like 15.5 miles to the gallon, which is not that great. I'm supposed to be getting a lot better, but I'm only at 2,000 miles, so that could improve. But I will say that the battery pack definitely seems like I don't feel like I'm filling up a lot, where my GX, I felt like I was constantly filling up. And this thing is also cheaper it feels cheaper to run, which is good because the battery pack should kind of deliver that to you. When I fill this up, you don't have to use premium gas. It takes regular unleaded gas, which is pretty cool. So you're saving a lot of money at the pump there. And then it also just, I feel like I was burning a lot of gas at idle in my old cars, where I'd be just kind of sitting somewhere. And I'm weird about this. I don't like to idle my cars for a long time. So I think I also like it for that reason. But in the past, like just dropping things off in places, I felt like my GX burned through gas, even though my fuel economy said I was getting 17 to 19 miles to the gallon. This says I'm getting less, but I feel like I'm filling it up less. So I haven't done any real tests. I'm just telling you how it feels. But when I go to the pump, it's certainly cheaper to fill it up because I'm using regular unleaded gas versus premium, like the GX 460 required. So all things to keep in mind. I think the battery pack in the back is a net positive for all things except smoothness in the powertrain, smoothness in the drivetrain. And we'll touch on this when I drive it in just a sec. But I will say that the battery pack, you feel it coming from something that probably has one of the smoothest powertrains to ever exist, the 4.6 liter V8 in that Lexus GX 460 with that 6-speed transmission that Toyota Lexus built. This thing feels a little bit luggy and jumpy, so you feel the battery pack at low speeds. Sometimes the truck will even run on just battery for like a few seconds, then the engine kicks in. I think they did a great job smoothing those things together. They probably did it as best they could. But overall, I would say that compared to a naturally aspirated V8, or not even just naturally aspirated, just a purely combustion engine powertrain, I think this is not as smooth because you have this transmission this transmission piece that is connected to the regular transmission that's tied to the battery, and you feel those things engage and disengage when you're driving. So you'll feel the battery go to the regular motor kick in, and just doesn't feel super smooth. Now, relatively speaking, I think it's good in general. Probably I haven't driven a ton of hybrids, but it's not something that like is driving me nuts. It's just one of those things that I certainly notice, and I don't really love it. My wife, for example, has a brand new RAV4, and I actually like kind of driving that thing a little bit better than this, which is weird to say, just because the powertrain is so smooth compared to this. So yeah, it's not the smoothest out there. I will say that, but you get used to it. So don't let me discourage you there. So yeah, anyway, that's it. Battery, exterior. That's enough talking out of me. It's a great truck. Check it out, test drive it. It might be good for you, but let's hop in a little bit deeper here. Let's take it for a drive, and I'll show you some of the things that I like and dislike about the truck, and show you how fast it is and all those things. All right, let's do it. All right, let me show you what I mean by this thing's got a lot of torque. We're pulling out into traffic right now, and your boy's gonna give it the beans. All right, ready? And straighten it out. Beans. Woo! Yeah, it'll get you up there moving quick. It's one of those things that, like, it's not the fastest truck, but that torque definitely throws you a little bit. And that's the biggest thing you'll notice when you floor it. The whole truck kind of squats. It's definitely a delay, and then it goes, okay? So that's definitely something you'll notice with this battery. The battery, you definitely, you feel that battery power. Now, outside of that, how does it drive? It drives really well. I think in terms of you know, it being a pickup truck, I think pickup trucks quite frequently ride really poorly. I think that this one does a really good job of being much more compliant of a ride than most out there. So it's one of those things that, you know, Toyota worked on this new platform. I think you really do feel it in this new platform that, you know, it handles really well as you sway back and forth, you turn the wheel. Not that you're going to be doing this in a pickup truck, but it's one of those things that, you know, you definitely notice there's an improvement over the previous gen. The previous gen felt a little bit looser. But with that said, you know, it does still feel like a pickup truck. So, you know, it's a little bit bouncy at times. And it does still feel a little bit, you know, loose. You don't have super tight handling in corners still, things like that. I think they did shift to a multi-link rear suspension in this, which definitely, you know, I think has improved the ride from the previous gen. So it's, you know, in turns, it is a little bit more compliant than the previous gen was, but it's not anything, you know, that's like going to make it feel like it's not a pickup truck. It does handle a little better. In terms of the drivability, I'll say it drives pretty small. It doesn't feel like it's as big as it is probably. So that's one thing to consider. It also is relatively quiet. I think that's something that I really do look for in a body-on-frame vehicle. So this being body-on-frame, I think, you know, they did a really good job compared to the previous gen at keeping the cabin really quiet. I think that's probably one of the biggest improvements that I've noticed in this truck. The cabin is really quiet at highway speeds, at cruising speeds. It's just a very, very quiet cabin. One thing related to noise that I don't like about the cabin, they pump in fake V8 noise. So when you start this truck up and you're on the inside of it, it's not like you can't tell, but like it's pretty realistic noise, and it almost sounds like you're driving a V8. Particularly when you get on it, you might have heard it when I got on the motor. It sounds like you're driving a V8, and you know that six-cylinder is not producing that sound. There is a way to turn this off. I was deep in a Reddit thread one day, and I found that if you take it to the dealership can actually turn it off. You can't turn it off with your own tools that you can buy. You know, if you have like a reader, you can't go turn it off that way. But if you take it to the dealership, they can turn this off for you. So it's one of those things that if it really bothers you, just go get it turned off. It's a little annoying, but you know, it is what it is. It doesn't really bother me, and I think that, you know, it sounds fine. It's not something that I'm pumped about, but you know, it is what it is. Other than that, in terms of drivability, it feels relatively quick. You know, the transmission shifts pretty quickly. It's got pretty good speed and power on the highway for general driving and passing. It's a little quicker than probably most trucks. It's not going to feel like quick compared to, you know, some sort of sports-esque car that you might drive. But you know, it's pretty decent. Here, I'll give it the beans again. Ready? So it goes pretty good. Hopefully there's no policia on this road. It goes pretty good though. So again, speed is not a problem. You're not buying a pickup truck for speed. One thing that I will say when driving, and I talked about this a little bit a few minutes ago, is the hesitation and the lack of smoothness and consistency in the transmission and the engine in general. That bothers me. So you have boost happening in the engine, which you feel, and you have the battery pack starting off. So you'll feel the battery pack surge you. There will be a little bit of a break as the engine boosts up, and then the engine will kick on and you'll feel boost kick in. And it all kind of feels a little bit jerky when it's put together. It doesn't feel, look, I think they did a great job doing a hybrid powertrain. I just kind of am a believer that a hybrid powertrain will probably never be as smooth as when you have one form of something powering, you know, your drivetrain. Just having a motor, you know, you can, it just seems like a smoother option, or just having a battery even might seem like a smoother option. When you have both and you have this, you know, transmission battery piece connected to the transmission, it just doesn't seem to feel super smooth. As we've already discussed, there's benefits to that. It's just one of the big knock-on effects of it is that you're just not going to have perfect smoothness throughout the entire RPM range. So I think that's one of my biggest complaints with the drivability of this truck. One other thing in terms of driving around town that I've noticed is that it does creak and rattle a little bit. You know, now hear me out. I'm coming from a Lexus GX460, so that thing was silent in you know, in all driving conditions. It really was a really, really comfortable, quiet car to drive at all times. So I'm nitpicking a little bit, but you'll hear like plastic pieces on the dash rattle, things in the seats rattle a little bit. There's just things that you notice that rattle as you drive the vehicle around. And in a $70,000 truck, I'd prefer that not be the case. Overall, though, I think drivability is really good. I don't want to bash this truck. Yeah, is it my favorite car I've ever owned? Truck? No, it's not. It's definitely not my favorite vehicle I've ever owned. I much prefer my Lexus to this vehicle, and I probably might be going back to a Lexus vehicle. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing another review for another car soon. But it's good, and I think if you're getting a pickup truck, they've really smoothed out a lot of the driving dynamics and things like that for it being a pickup truck. And people who buy pickup trucks, this is probably a great pickup truck for, if you're hauling things, or if it's something that you want to be durable and last a long time. It does, the powertrain, does feel rock solid. It doesn't, like, I've driven vehicles where the powertrain sometimes feels a little bit flimsy. This thing doesn't ever hiccup. It just kind of has some hesitation, but it's consistent in the way that you feel it. You can always expect it. You can kind of predict it. And I think it has that classic, Toyota feel where the motor just feels solid. It's, when you're feeling just the engine, it's pretty smooth and consistent. You don't ever hear any weird noises coming from the powertrain or the drivetrain. That all feels super solid in this truck. It's more just the smoothness that I'm nitpicking. So overall, I think it's solid. I think as they develop, 2024, 25, they will work out those kinks as Toyota does. They'll probably keep this same platform for 10 years and they'll work out all the kinks. I think the biggest kinks and my biggest, complaints that I have about this vehicle are just the rattles, the creaks in the interior, the cheap plastics throughout the interior. And I think these are all things they can improve. So I do think eventually this is going to be a really great truck, and it's even a pretty good truck right now. But yeah, I think you probably will find that Toyota engineers have spent a lot of time making this new 6-cylinder battery combo power pack, reliable. I know there's a lot of conversation about, we lost the 5.7 V8. Is this new Tundra going to be reliable? Because one of the main reasons people buy these vehicles is for reliability as well as resale. And resale is one of the reasons why I bought this vehicle as well, because it's typically year over year the highest resale vehicle you can buy in terms of depreciation outside of like maybe a Porsche 911 or something. But dollar for dollar, 10% on this is a lot less than 10% on a 911. So this thing does pretty well on a depreciation scale. And I buy a lot of my cars that way. I've been asked to do a video about how I pick and choose what cars I buy. I buy all my cars in cash, and I do a very good job at trying to pick cars that don't depreciate a lot so I can carry my equity into my future vehicles. Comment down below if you want me to make a video about that. I will make another video on that if you'd like. But anyway, this vehicle is one of the best you can buy for depreciation, and I think it'll continue to be as reliable as the previous gen over time. Now, turbos in general are never as reliable as naturally aspirated vehicles because they just run hotter. I shouldn't say reliable, I should say they never last as long without major repairs. So a turbo engine could last a long time. You're just going to have to replace the turbos around 100,000 miles most likely, as far as what we know to be true today. Now, maybe Toyota will break that, that standard, that expectation of what we've seen, but it's hard to tell. So this is going to be a good use case for that. They've tested this engine out in some other vehicles, namely the, the LX 500. It used to be the LS, and I think now it's LS 500. It was the LS 460, now it's LS 500. They have this motor in that vehicle as well as a couple others. So we'll see. But overall, look, the drivability is good, but I can hear some things rattling right now in my back seat. That kind of stuff just pisses me off a little bit. All right, so time for the final thoughts. I've had this car for a minute, about 2,000 miles on it. What do I think overall? Do I like it? Do I hate it? Look, I think if you're buying a half-ton pickup, this is a great one to buy. I personally have decided that a half-ton pickup is not what's right for my life, with my family, what I'm looking for. I do like this vehicle a lot. It's a great truck. I just want something a little bit more luxury, a little bit faster, a little bit more agile, easy to park, that kind of thing. Putting all that aside, and I think it's relevant because a lot of people buy pickups these days for those reasons, to be family haulers. You know, I think this is a decent one if you want to buy that. Now, I would just more so encourage you to look at other vehicles as family haulers instead of pickup trucks, like larger SUVs. You know, like a Lexus LX 600 or something. I know it's pretty expensive, but you know, they're sweet. Um, this vehicle, in terms of being a pickup truck, I think is great. For someone who wants to spend 70 grand on a truck, it's a great truck. I just think when you're spending 70 grand, I would rather have something a lot more luxury. But if you have to get a pickup truck, this is probably a good one to get for 70 grand. I might look at the Ford F-150 just to do a comparison, because I think the interior in the F-150 might be just a little bit better made. But with that said, I'd probably take the Toyota for reliability. I'm sure this vehicle will probably prove to be pretty reliable in the long term. The 5-liter V8 from Ford, for example, is reliable, but like that EcoBoost, I would never own it. I would take this one all day. But overall, this is a vehicle for somebody who really wants a pickup truck but wants a little bit of luxury. This is not a vehicle for somebody who wants a luxury family hauler with a little bit of pickup truck. You know, it's more pickup truck than luxury hauler is kind of what I'm getting at. And that's fine. It is what it is. But I will say I want to commend Toyota here for putting a lot of you know, positive improvements into their Toyota Tundra lineup. I think the Toyota Tundra was well overdue for this overhaul. I think they overall did a really good job. And I think obviously this truck has some kinks to work out, so bear that in mind. If you're going to buy one, there might be a few things wrong with it. I would encourage you to buy a 2024 rather than a 2023, because hey, maybe they worked out some of the kinks on the assembly line. I'm not really sure, but maybe they did. So I would look to get as new as you possibly can. And again, I think if you're looking for a pickup truck, this thing's going to haul a lot. It's going to be pretty efficient. It's going to be pretty comfortable for you and your family. And it's going to handle pretty good all around. It does a really good job. These newer chassis that they've designed for trucks that Toyota designed are pretty good. Better than previous generations for sure. So if you're a pickup truck person and you need that in your life, this could be great. If not, I'd encourage you to look at a full-size SUV. And with that, that's my overall take on the Toyota Tundra Platinum. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.